The notification popped up on my laptop screen at exactly 2:17 a.m. A friend request from someone named Brent C. Entrepreneur, with a profile picture showing a guy in an expensive suit grinning next to a Tesla. I wouldn't have paid attention, except for one small detail that made my stomach drop like a stone in deep water. The mutual friend listed was my wife, Jenna. I'm Nick Callahan, and I run a construction business here in Pine Ridge, Maine. Not glamorous work, but it pays the bills and keeps me grounded in reality. Something my wife seemed to have lost touch with lately, especially since she started working at that tech startup downtown. Jenna was supposed to be at a networking event tonight, her third one this week. Funny how someone in human resources suddenly needed so much networking. I clicked on the profile. Brent Colby, 32, lives in Pine Ridge. Relationship status: married. His feed was full of motivational quotes about success and photos of expensive dinners at restaurants I recognized. The same restaurants Jenna had been posting about on her Instagram stories. My phone buzzed. A text from Jenna. Event running late. Don't wait up. Love you. The timestamp showed 2:15 a.m. 2 minutes before this, Brent character sent me a friend request. I set my laptop aside and walked to our bedroom window. Jenna's car wasn't in the driveway. It hadn't been there when I got home from the job site at 11. I'd assumed she was still at her event, but what kind of networking happens past midnight on a Tuesday? The pieces started falling into place like dominoes. The new perfume she'd been wearing. The yoga classes that somehow never made her more flexible. The way she'd started putting her phone face down during dinner. The sudden interest in girls' nights with her roommate Sasha. I grabbed my phone and opened our shared cell phone account. Call logs don't lie, and what I saw there made everything crystal clear. 47 calls to the same number in the past 2 weeks. A number that wasn't saved in her contacts, but I had a pretty good guess who it belonged to. The front door opened downstairs. Jenna's heels clicked across the hardwood floor, trying to be quiet but failing miserably. I heard her stumble slightly, probably from whatever she'd been drinking at her networking event. I stayed in bed, pretending to sleep, and listened to her routine. The bathroom faucet running, the sound of mouthwash swishing, the closet door opening and closing. She was covering her tracks, but she was about 3 weeks too late for that. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. When she slipped into bed beside me, I could smell it. Not just alcohol, but cologne. Expensive cologne that definitely wasn't mine. The same scent that had been lingering on her clothes for weeks. "Nick?" she whispered. "You awake?" I kept my breathing steady, feigning sleep. She settled in beside me, but I could feel the tension in her body. Guilty conscience, maybe. Or maybe she was texting her new friend Brent. Morning came with the usual chaos. Jenna rushing around, getting ready for work, complaining about being tired. I made coffee and watched her performance, wondering how long this had been going on and how stupid she thought I was. "I might be late again tonight," she said, not meeting my eyes. "Marnie wants the whole team to attend this investor presentation." Marnie was her boss at the startup. I'd met her a few times. Sharp, ambitious, the kind of person who ate networking events for breakfast. But I'd also noticed how Marnie looked at me during company parties, like she was sizing up whether I was good enough for her star employee. "Which investors?" I asked casually, buttering my toast. Jenna paused, coffee mug halfway to her lips. Some venture capital firm from Boston. I don't remember the name." Lie number 1 of the day, and it wasn't even 8 a.m. "Should be interesting," I said. "Take pictures." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Will do." After she left, I sat in my kitchen and planned my next move. I'm not the kind of guy who flies off the handle or makes scenes. 20 years in construction teaches you patience and planning. You measure twice, cut once, and you always know what's holding up the structure before you start tearing it down. I called my best friend Eli, who runs a private security business after his stint as a cop. If anyone would know how to handle this situation properly, it would be him. "Nick, buddy, what's up?" Eli's voice was already suspicious. He knew me well enough to recognize when something was wrong. "I need a favor," I said, "and maybe some advice." "Shoot." I told him about Brent, about the phone calls, about the networking events that smelled like expensive cologne. Eli listened without interrupting, which was one of the things I appreciated about him. "So what do you want to do?" he asked when I finished. "I want to know exactly what I'm dealing with before I make any decisions." "Smart. Give me the phone number and I'll see what I can dig up on this Brent character. In the meantime, don't do anything stupid." "Define stupid." "Confronting either of them without proof. Trust me, you want documentation before you make any moves." That evening, I drove to the Briar Patch, the local bar where everyone in Pine Ridge eventually ended up. Moira, the bartender, had been serving drinks and collecting gossip for 15 years. If anyone knew what was happening in this town, it was her. "Nick Callahan," she said, sliding a beer across the bar before I even ordered. "Haven't seen you in a while. How's married life?" The irony in her voice told me she already knew the answer. "Complicated," I said, taking a sip. "You hear anything interesting lately?" Moira leaned across the bar, lowering her voice. "Depends what you want to hear, but if you're asking about that flashy guy with the Tesla who's been bragging about his latest conquest, then yeah, I might have heard something." My grip tightened on the beer bottle. "What kind of bragging?" "The kind that involves showing off pictures and talking about married women who are finally ready to have some real fun." Guy's a real piece of work, if you ask me. She reached under the bar and pulled out her phone. "He was in here Saturday night, showing these off to anyone who'd listen." The photos made my stomach turn. Jenna and Brent at dinner, Jenna and Brent at some upscale bar, Jenna wearing the dress I'd bought her for our anniversary, but she wasn't wearing it for me. "There's more," Moira said quietly. "He's been talking about some big score he's planning. Something about a business opportunity and a woman who's going to help him get funding." "What kind of business opportunity?" "Real estate development. Says he's got connections at some tech company that's looking to expand. Plans to flip some properties and make a fortune." The pieces clicked together. Jenna had access to information about the startup's expansion plans. Confidential information that could be worth a lot of money to the right person. My phone buzzed. A text from Jenna. "Presentation went great. Celebrating with the team, home by midnight." It was only 9 p.m. I showed Moira the message. "Honey," she said, shaking her head. "That boy Brent left here 20 minutes ago with some blonde in a red dress. Said they were going to his place to discuss business." Jenna owned a red dress. She'd worn it to our last anniversary dinner. I finished my beer and left Moira a generous tip. "Thanks for the information." "Nick," she called as I reached the door. "Whatever you're planning, be smart about it. Guys like Brent always think they're untouchable, but they usually have more to lose than they realize." I drove home slowly, thinking about what Moira had said. She was right. I needed to be smart about this, but I also needed to be thorough. Back home, I went to Jenna's laptop. She'd left it open on the kitchen counter, probably in her rush to get ready for her fake investor presentation. Her email was still logged in. What I found there made everything clear. Months of messages between her and Brent. Not just romantic messages, but business discussions. Plans to use her position at the startup to feed him inside information. Discussions about property deals and investment opportunities. They weren't just having an affair. They were planning to steal from her company and leave town together. The most recent email was from this afternoon. "Everything's set for Friday. Marnie signed off on the property survey, and the investors are committed. After we close the deal, we can disappear and start over somewhere warm." Friday was 3 days away. I copied everything to a flash drive and sent myself the most important emails. Then I sat back and considered my options. I could confront them directly, but that would just put them on guard. I could go to the police, but they hadn't actually committed any crimes yet. I could tell Marnie, but she might not believe me without more proof. Or I could let them think they were getting away with it, and make sure they got exactly what they deserved. My phone rang. Eli. "I've got information on your boy Brent," he said. "And buddy, you're not going to like it." "Brent Colby is a professional con artist," Eli said over breakfast the next morning. We were sitting in a diner across town, far from anywhere Jenna or her friends might show up. Real name is Brent Coleman, and he's got a history of targeting women in positions of corporate access. I stared at the file Eli had put together overnight. Photos, credit reports, police records from 3 different states. The man my wife was planning to run away with was a career criminal. "He's been married 4 times, Eli continued. "Each time to a woman with access to valuable business information. The pattern is always the same: seduce the target, gain their trust, extract whatever he can from their company, then disappear when things get hot." "What happened to the other wives?" "2 of them went to prison for corporate espionage. One lost everything in a bankruptcy after he cleaned out their joint accounts. The 4th one—" Eli paused. "She's still paying off the debts he left behind?" I flipped through the pages, my anger building with each new detail. "So Jenna isn't special. She's just another mark." "Looks that way. But here's the interesting part. He's never targeted anyone in Maine before. I think he's getting desperate, maybe running out of easy targets in other states. Or maybe he's getting sloppy. Could be both. Either way, your wife is about to become an accessory to corporate fraud, and she has no idea what she's really gotten herself into." I closed the file and looked at Eli. "What would you do?" "Honestly, I'd probably want to beat the guy senseless, but that would just land me in jail and leave Jenna to face the consequences alone." He leaned forward. "The smart play is to make sure they both get what's coming to them, but through legal channels." "I'm listening." "We document everything. We get proof of the fraud they're planning, and then we make sure the right people see that proof at exactly the right time." "You mean set them up?" "I mean let them set themselves up, and make sure we're there to catch it on camera." I spent the rest of the morning thinking about Eli's suggestion. Part of me wanted immediate satisfaction, to confront Jenna and Brent and watch their faces when they realized I knew everything. But the smarter part of me, the part that had built a successful business from nothing, knew that patience would serve me better. That afternoon, I drove to Jenna's office building. The startup occupied the top 3 floors of a converted warehouse downtown, all glass walls and open workspaces designed to foster collaboration and innovation. I'd always thought it looked like a fishbowl. I parked across the street and watched the building through binoculars. At 3:30, Brent's Tesla pulled into the visitor parking area. He got out wearing an expensive suit and carrying a briefcase, looking every inch the successful entrepreneur he pretended to be. 20 minutes later, he emerged with Jenna. They walked to his car, and I could see them talking intently about something. Jenna kept looking around nervously, like she expected to be watched. Smart instinct. Too bad it was about 3 months too late. They drove to a coffee shop on the other side of town. I followed at a distance, using techniques Eli had taught me from his cop days. They sat at a corner table, and I positioned myself where I could see them clearly through the window. Jenna had brought a folder with her. She slid it across the table to Brent, who opened it and started photographing the contents with his phone. Even from a distance, I could see the startup's logo on the documents. I took photos of my own, making sure to capture their faces and the document exchange. Then I called Eli. "They're making the handoff now," I said quietly. Jenna just gave him what looks like confidential company documents. "Perfect. That's conspiracy to commit corporate espionage. Keep documenting everything." After the coffee shop, they drove to a real estate office. I couldn't follow them inside without being obvious, so I waited in my truck and watched the windows. Through the glass, I could see them meeting with a realtor, pointing at maps and documents spread across a conference table. My phone buzzed. A text from Jenna. "Working late again tonight. Don't wait up." I looked at the timestamp, then at the real estate office where my wife was planning her new life with another man. The text had been sent 5 minutes ago. When they finally emerged from the real estate office, Brent and Jenna didn't head back toward her workplace or our house. Instead, they drove to the other side of town, to a neighborhood of converted lofts and trendy restaurants. Brent's neighborhood. I followed them to a sleek apartment building and watched them disappear into the lobby. The Tesla was parked in a spot marked B. Colby, Unit 4B. This was where my wife had been spending her evenings. This was where she came when she told me she was at networking events and investor presentations. I sat in my truck for 2 hours, watching the fourth-floor windows and thinking about the life I'd built with Jenna. 8 years of marriage, a house we'd renovated together, plans for kids that kept getting postponed because of her career ambitions. All of it had been a lie for months, maybe longer. At 9:30, Jenna's car pulled out of the parking garage. She drove straight home, probably to maintain the illusion that she'd been working late. I waited another 30 minutes, then followed. When I got home, Jenna was already in bed, pretending to be asleep. I could smell Brent's cologne on her hair. The next morning, I made a decision. If Jenna and Brent wanted to play games, I was going to play along, but I was going to play to win. I started with something simple. While Jenna was in the shower, I logged into our shared wireless account and changed all the passwords. Her phone, her laptop, her tablet, everything that connected to our home network would stop working the moment she tried to use it. Then I called our credit card companies and reported suspicious activity on the cards Jenna had access to. Not fraud exactly, but enough unusual charges to trigger security holds. Finally, I canceled her Uber account and removed her access to our shared ride-sharing services. Small inconveniences, but they would add up. And more importantly, they would make her dependent on Brent for things she'd taken for granted. When Jenna came downstairs for breakfast, she was already frustrated. "The internet isn't working," she said, waving her phone, "and my laptop won't connect either." "Weird," I said, not looking up from my newspaper. "Mine's working fine." She tried for another few minutes, growing more agitated. "I need to check my email before work. Can you look at the router?" "Sure, but I've got to get to the job site early today. Maybe call the internet company?" "I don't have time for that." She grabbed her purse and keys. "I'll figure it out at the office." After she left, I called Eli. "Phase 1 is in motion. How's your research going?" "I've got some interesting news about Brent's business activities. Turns out he's been using fake references and forged documents to secure loans. I've got a contact at the State Attorney General's office who's very interested in hearing about it." "How interested?" "Interested enough to start building a case, especially if we can provide evidence of ongoing fraud." "What kind of evidence?" "The kind you're going to help me gather tonight." That evening, Eli and I parked outside Brent's apartment building with surveillance equipment that definitely wasn't available to civilians. The benefits of having an ex-cop for a best friend. "Are you sure about this?" I asked as Eli adjusted the directional microphone. "Relax. We're not breaking any laws. We're sitting in a public parking area, and if we happen to overhear a conversation through an open window, that's not our fault." At 8:15, Jenna's car pulled into the garage. 15 minutes later, we could hear voices from Brent's apartment. The directional mic picked up every word. "The documents are perfect," Brent was saying. "My contact at the bank says the loan will be approved by Friday." "What if someone finds out?" That was Jenna's voice, nervous and uncertain. "Nobody's going to find out. Your husband thinks you're working late, your boss thinks you're handling a special project, and my wife thinks I'm in Boston on business." "You're still married?" There was a pause. "It's complicated, but after Friday none of that will matter. We'll have enough money to disappear and start over anywhere we want." "What about my job? What about Nick?" "What about them? Jenna, you're thinking too small. This deal is worth $2 million. We can buy a house on a beach somewhere and never look back." I felt Eli's hand on my shoulder as my fists clenched. Through the microphone, I could hear my wife agreeing to steal $2 million and abandon our marriage. "There's just one problem," Jenna said. "Nick's been acting strange lately. I think he might be suspicious." "Suspicious of what?" "You've been careful, haven't you?" "I think so. But he asked about the investor presentation yesterday, and he's been watching me differently. Maybe it's time to accelerate our timeline." "What do you mean?" "I mean, maybe we don't wait until Friday. Maybe we make our move tomorrow night and get out of town before anyone knows what happened." Eli and I looked at each other. Tomorrow night was Thursday. If they moved up their timeline, we'd have less than 24 hours to stop them. "Can you get the final documents tomorrow?" Brent asked. "I think so. Marnie's been distracted with the new investor meetings. She probably won't notice if I access a few more files." "Perfect. We'll make the transfer tomorrow evening, and by Friday morning we'll be halfway to Florida." The conversation continued, but I'd heard enough. My wife and her lover were planning to steal $2 million and disappear in less than 24 hours. "Well," Eli said quietly, packing up the surveillance equipment, "looks like we're moving to Phase 2 ahead of schedule." "What's Phase 2? "We make sure they get exactly what they deserve." Thursday morning started with Jenna in full panic mode. Not only was her internet still down, but her credit cards had been declined at her usual coffee shop, and her Uber account had mysteriously stopped working. "This is ridiculous," she said, frantically trying to call customer service while getting ready for work. "Everything's broken at the same time." "Maybe it's a sign," I suggested, buttering my toast with deliberate calm. "A sign of what?" "That you should slow down. Take a step back. Reevaluate your priorities." She shot me a look that could have melted steel. "I don't have time for your philosophy this morning, Nick. I need to get to work." "I can give you a ride." "No, that's okay. I'll figure something out." She grabbed her purse and stormed out, probably to call Brent for a rescue, which was exactly what I wanted. After she left, I called Eli. She took the bait. "What's our next move?" I spent the night setting up surveillance at 3 locations: Brent's apartment, Jenna's office, and the bank where they're planning to make the transfer. My contact at the Attorney General's office is standing by with a warrant, and I've got backup ready to move when we give the signal. "What about Jenna's boss? Marnie needs to know what's happening." "Already handled. I called her this morning and explained the situation. She's cooperating fully. In fact, she's the one who confirmed that the documents Jenna's been accessing are worth exactly $2 million in insider information." "How'd she take the news about her star employee?" "About as well as you'd expect. She's furious, but she's also scared about what this could do to the company's reputation. She wants Jenna and Brent caught as much as we do." I spent the morning at my construction site, trying to focus on work while my phone buzzed with updates from Eli. Jenna had arrived at the office in Brent's Tesla. They'd spent an hour in a conference room with the door closed. Jenna had accessed several confidential files and printed multiple documents. At noon, my phone rang. "Jenna." "Hey," she said, her voice artificially bright. "I'm going to be really late tonight. We've got this emergency project that needs to be finished." "What kind of emergency?" "Just some documents that need to be prepared for tomorrow's board meeting. Nothing exciting." Lie after lie, delivered with the casual ease of someone who'd been practicing deception for months. "Will you be home at all tonight?" I asked. "Probably not until very late. Maybe I'll just crash at Sasha's place so I don't wake you up." Sasha, her roommate and accomplice in this whole charade, another person who'd been lying to my face for months. "That's thoughtful of you," I said. "I love you, Jenna." There was a pause. "I love you too." But her voice cracked slightly when she said it, and I knew that whatever feelings she'd once had for me were buried under months of deception and greed. That afternoon, Eli called with an update. "They're making their move." Brent just left his apartment with 2 suitcases and a laptop bag. Jenna left the office with a briefcase full of documents. They're meeting at the bank in an hour. Are we ready? We're ready. But Nick, once we do this, there's no going back. Jenna's going to face serious charges. Are you sure you want to go through with it? I thought about the question for a long moment. 8 years of marriage. All the good times, the shared dreams, the life we'd built together. But then I thought about the months of lies, the betrayal, the casual way she'd planned to destroy everything we'd worked for. I'm sure. Then let's go catch some criminals. The bank was a small, regional institution that specialized in business loans and real estate transactions. Brent had chosen it specifically because it was less likely to have the sophisticated fraud detection systems of larger banks. Eli and I positioned ourselves across the street in an unmarked van, watching through tinted windows as Brent and Jenna arrived separately and met in the parking lot. They looked nervous but excited, like kids about to pull off the ultimate prank. "Audio check," Eli said into his radio. "All units in position." The response crackled back. "Unit 1 ready. Unit 2 ready. Warrant is signed and ready to execute." We watched Brent and Jenna enter the bank. Through the windows, we could see them meeting with a loan officer, spreading documents across a desk, pointing at charts and graphs. "They're actually going through with it," I said, almost unable to believe it. "Criminals always think they're smarter than everyone else," Eli replied. "Right up until the moment they get caught." 30 minutes later, they emerged from the bank looking triumphant. Brent was carrying a cashier's check, and Jenna was practically glowing with excitement. They stood in the parking lot, embracing and laughing like they'd just won the lottery. In a way, they thought they had. "Now?" I asked. "Now," Eli confirmed, speaking into his radio. "All units, go." What happened next was like watching a perfectly choreographed dance. Unmarked cars appeared from 3 directions, boxing in Brent's Tesla. Agents in suits emerged from the vehicles, badges visible, moving with professional precision. Brent's face went white when he saw them coming. Jenna looked confused at first, then terrified as she realized what was happening. "Brent Coleman, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit bank fraud," the lead agent announced. "Jennifer Callahan, you're under arrest for corporate espionage and conspiracy to commit fraud." I watched my wife's legs give out as the handcuffs clicked into place. 8 years of marriage, and I'd never seen her look so small and helpless. "The cashier's check," Eli said quietly. $2 million they'll never get to spend. As they were loaded into separate cars, Jenna's eyes found mine through the van's tinted windows. She couldn't see me, but somehow she knew I was there. Her mouth moved, forming words I couldn't hear but could easily read. "How could you?" The question hung in the air as the police cars drove away, taking my wife and her lover to face the consequences of their choices. "How do you feel?" Eli asked. I thought about it for a moment, expecting to feel satisfaction or vindication or maybe even regret. Instead, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Relief. "Like I can finally breathe again," I said. "Good. Because the hard part's just beginning." "What do you mean?" "Media attention, divorce proceedings, testimony at their trials. This story's going to follow you for a while." He was right, of course. But as I watched the bank employees being interviewed by federal agents and thought about the evidence that would soon be presented in court, I realized I was okay with that. For months, I'd been living in a world built on lies, wondering if I was crazy for suspecting the truth. Now the truth was out in the open, documented and undeniable. My phone buzzed. A text from Marnie, Jenna's boss. "Thank you for helping us stop this. The company owes you a debt of gratitude." Another text, this one from Moira at the Briar Patch. "Heard the news on the police scanner. First rounds on the house when you're ready." And finally, a text from Mrs. Hadley, my elderly neighbor. Saw the news trucks outside. Are you okay? I have casserole if you need dinner. For the first time in months, people were telling me the truth. It felt like coming home after a long journey through hostile territory. So what now? Eli asked as we drove away from the bank. Now I go home and figure out how to rebuild my life. Any regrets? I thought about Jenna, sitting in a holding cell, probably wondering how everything had gone so wrong so quickly. I thought about Brent, facing the reality that his career as a con artist was finally over. I thought about the dreams and plans that had turned to ash in a single afternoon. Just one, I said finally. What's that? I regret that it took me so long to see who they really were. Eli nodded. Sometimes the people closest to us are the hardest to see clearly. But once you do see them, I added, you can't unsee them. And then you have to decide what to do about it. Yeah, I said, watching Pine Ridge roll by through the van windows. Then you have to decide. The story broke on the local news that evening. Tech startup employees arrested in multi-million-dollar fraud scheme. They used Jenna's corporate headshot and a photo of Brent from his fake LinkedIn profile. Both of them looked so confident and successful in those pictures, so sure of themselves. I turned off the television and sat in my kitchen, eating Mrs. Hadley's casserole and listening to the silence. For the first time in months, I knew exactly where my wife was and what she was doing. She was in a holding cell, waiting for her arraignment, probably still trying to figure out how her perfect plan had fallen apart. My phone had been ringing all evening. Reporters mostly, but also friends and family who'd seen the news. I let most of the calls go to voicemail, but when Jenna's mother called, I answered. Nick, what's happening? Carol's voice was shaky with confusion and fear. The news is saying Jenna was arrested, but that can't be right. It's right, Carol. But why? What did she do? I explained the situation as gently as I could, but there was no way to soften the reality. Jenna had stolen confidential information from her company and conspired with a career criminal to commit fraud. The evidence was overwhelming, and the consequences were serious. She could go to prison, Carol said, her voice breaking. Yes, she could. How long have you known? I suspected something was wrong for weeks. I've known the truth for about 3 days. Why didn't you try to stop her? It was a fair question, and one I'd been asking myself. I tried to give her chances to come clean, but she was committed to this path, Carol. She made her choices. She's still your wife. No, I said quietly. She stopped being my wife the day she decided to betray everything we built together. After I hung up, I walked through the house Jenna and I had shared, seeing it with new eyes. The kitchen, where we'd planned our future over morning coffee. The living room where we'd watched movies and talked about having kids. The bedroom where she'd lied to my face every night for months. Tomorrow I'd start the process of reclaiming my life. Tonight, I just wanted to sit with the silence and process what had happened. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Sasha. I need to talk to you about Jenna. Sasha, the roommate who'd helped cover for Jenna's affair. I almost deleted the message, but curiosity got the better of me. What about her? I texted back. Can we meet? There are things you should know. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her at a diner across town. Sasha was already there when I arrived, looking nervous and exhausted. Thank you for coming, she said, as I slid into the booth across from her. This better be important. It is. She fidgeted with her coffee cup, avoiding eye contact. I need to tell you that I never wanted any part of this. Jenna asked me to cover for her, and I thought it was just a harmless affair. Harmless? I didn't know about the business stuff, the fraud, any of that. She told me she was just seeing someone and needed me to provide alibis. So you helped her lie to me for months? Yes. Her voice was barely a whisper. And I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I'm sorry. Why are you telling me this now? Because there's more. Things the police don't know yet. She reached into her purse and pulled out a flash drive. Jenna asked me to hide this for her. She said it was just personal photos, but after what happened today, I looked at it. I took the flash drive. What's on it? Evidence of other schemes, other people Brent was targeting. Jenna wasn't his first victim here in Pine Ridge, and she wasn't going to be his last. My stomach dropped. How many others? At least 3 that I could identify from the files. Women in positions at the bank, the city planning office, and the hospital. He was running multiple cons at the same time. Have you told the police? Not yet. I wanted to give it to you first, let you decide what to do with it. I pocketed the flash drive. I'll make sure it gets to the right people. There's something else, Sasha said. Jenna really did love you, Nick. I know that doesn't matter now, but she talked about you all the time. She was torn up about what she was doing. Not torn up enough to stop doing it. No, Sasha admitted, but she wasn't the cold, calculating person the news is making her out to be. She got in over her head with someone who was much smarter and more manipulative than she realized. That doesn't excuse what she did. I know, I'm just saying, maybe when this is all over, maybe there's a chance for forgiveness. I looked at this young woman who'd helped destroy my marriage, asking me to consider forgiving the wife who'd betrayed me. The irony was almost funny. Sasha, I said, standing to leave, forgiveness isn't something you can ask for. It's something you earn. And right now, neither of you has earned anything from me except the truth. The next morning, I delivered the flash drive to Eli, who passed it along to the federal agents handling the case. By afternoon, 3 more arrests had been made. Brent's other victims had been turned into unwitting accomplices, just like Jenna. The scope of the conspiracy was bigger than anyone had realized. Brent hadn't just been targeting individual women. He'd been building a network of sources across multiple institutions, planning to extract millions of dollars from the entire community. Your wife was actually one of the smaller fish in this pond, Eli told me over lunch. The woman at the bank had access to loan approval systems. The one at city planning could manipulate zoning decisions. Brent was planning to corner the entire local real estate market. How much money are we talking about? Conservative estimate, $20 million over the next 5 years. I whistled low, and Jenna thought she was getting away with $2 million. She was getting played just as much as everyone else. Brent's real plan was to use all these women to set up his deals, then disappear and leave them holding the bag. So she was a victim too? A victim who chose to become a perpetrator, Eli corrected. She had multiple opportunities to walk away or come clean. Instead, she doubled down every time. That afternoon, I met with a divorce attorney. The process would be complicated by the criminal charges, but the outcome was inevitable. 8 years of marriage ended by months of lies. Given the circumstances, the attorney explained, you'll likely retain most of the marital assets. The house, the business, the savings accounts, all of that should stay with you. What about her legal fees? That's her problem now. It felt strange, thinking of Jenna as a separate person with separate problems. For 8 years, we'd been a team, facing everything together. Now she was facing the biggest crisis of her life alone, and it was entirely her own doing. That evening, I drove to the Briar Patch for the drink Moira had promised me. The bar was busier than usual, probably because everyone in town was talking about the arrests. There he is, Moira called out as I walked in. The man who caught the biggest con artist Pine Ridge has ever seen. I took a seat at the bar, uncomfortable with the attention. I didn't catch anyone. I just documented what they were already doing. Same thing, said a voice behind me. I turned to see Marnie, Jenna's former boss. Mind if I join you? She sat down without waiting for an answer. I wanted to thank you personally for what you did. If you hadn't come forward, Brent could have destroyed our company. How bad was the damage? Bad enough, We're going to survive, but it'll take months to rebuild trust with our investors. Jenna had access to everything: financial projections, expansion plans, client lists. She could have sold our entire business model to competitors. Did she? We don't think so, but we're conducting a full audit to be sure. Marnie ordered a drink and studied me carefully. Can I ask you something personal? Shoot. How did you know? I worked with Jenna every day and I never suspected anything. She got careless, started lying about things that were easy to check, and once I started looking, the evidence was everywhere. You must hate her. I thought about the question. Did I hate Jenna? I hate what she did. I hate the choices she made. But the person she became over these past few months, that's not the woman I married. Do you think she can come back from this? I don't know. That's up to her now. Marnie nodded. For what it's worth, I think you handled this exactly right. A lot of men would have just confronted her and made a scene. You were smart about it. Smart doesn't make it hurt less. No, she agreed, but it makes the outcome more just. I finished my drink and headed home, thinking about justice and consequences and the price of betrayal. Tomorrow, Jenna would face a judge for her arraignment. Next week, the preliminary hearings would begin. In a few months, there would be a trial. And through it all, I would rebuild my life one day at a time, one decision at a time, one truth at a time. The house felt different when I got home. Not empty exactly, but honest. For the first time in months, I knew exactly what was happening under my own roof. I sat in my kitchen and opened a beer, thinking about the future. The construction business was doing well. I had good friends, a solid reputation, and now I had something I'd lost without realizing it. Peace of mind. My phone buzzed one final time. Another unknown number, another text message. Mr. Callahan, this is Jennifer's cellmate. She wanted me to tell you she's sorry and she loves you. I stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it without responding. Some conversations were over, whether the other person realized it or not. Outside, Pine Ridge settled into another quiet evening, a little safer now that Brent Coleman was behind bars, a little wiser now that his victims understood the price of trusting the wrong person. And in my kitchen, I finished my beer and started planning tomorrow, grateful for the luxury of making plans I could actually count on. The truth, it turned out, really could set you free, even when it hurt like nothing you'd ever felt before.